So last week we got all fancy pants and went into a bunch of AI stuff and watched the Great Train Robbery and all these different old, obscure film clips and things. This week is very much the opposite. This week is going to be a real light week. I don't even know quite what there is to say about this show. I guess we'll see. But that guy, Random Lad, who has pointed us to some various old shows like The Duck Factory with Jim Carrey, I was just like, let me go back through some of his stuff that he left comments about, like, hey, have you heard of this show? You heard of that show? And he brought up this show called Quark, that is a 70s sci-fi show when we were doing that run of watching 70s sci-fi shows, you know? And it was made by the guy who did Get Smart. And Get Smart's a pretty classic show. You know, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I have fond memories of that. It was rebooted a million times. I think, you know, they made a movie as recently as like 2008. So that was his Gilligan's Island. And then his It's About Time, you know, his other show that nobody remembers was this show called Quark. So I was like, I don't know, let me just take a quick gander to see what this is. And let me show you the first image I saw of this show where I was like, oh yeah, we got to watch that show. So I went to the Wikipedia page and this is the first thing I saw. This 70s space commander man. And
with two babes.
Yeah, his two, Richard Benjamin and the Barnstable twins in NBC's Quark. Yeah, these two blonde twins. Not quite in bikinis, but basically.
Yeah, the go-go pants and the little hot pants. Yeah. Or the go-go boots and the little hot pants. And the little brassieres that barely cover those, but they've got long sleeves in them.
Meanwhile, this guy, I mean, you know, you could set a watch by this guy's haircut. He's the serious commander.
Yeah.
You know?
Richard Benjamin is quite a well-known movie actor from these days. Not necessarily, this is TV, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not a TV actor, but I can't think of anything that he'd be in, but he was very well known.
Yeah, well, I mean, just because that's such a stereotypical, like if you were making a joke about TV in the 70s. You know?
That's the image.
Yeah, it's like a parody of itself. And it is a comedy show, to be fair. So maybe they're self-aware of how absurd that is, or maybe that's just the 70s. See, I didn't even really take notes for this because there's so little. I mean, this is it. Quark is a 1977 American science fiction sitcom starring Richard Benjamin. The series was canceled in 1978, so 8 episodes. Quark was created by Buck Henry, co-creator of the spy spoof Get Smart. And the plot is the show set on a United Galaxy sanitation patrol cruiser, an interstellar garbage scow operating out of the United Galaxy space station Parma 1 in the year 2226. Adam Quark, the main character, works to clean up trash in space by collecting space baggies with his trusted and highly unusual crew. Quark draws heavily on Star Trek as a source of parody. In its short run, specific episodes also satirize such science fiction as Star Wars, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Buck Rogers, and Flash Gordon, which I always forget that those are two different things. They're not the same thing. And 3 of the episodes were direct parodies of Star Trek episodes. So, I mean, that's it, you know? And then you got each episode, they got a little breakdown. Oh, it did win one Emmy nomination for costume design, which, hey, you can't argue that. I mean, look at those ladies. Yeah, and Random Lad said that he has more or less fond memories of this show, although he did say the first episode is not, you know, doesn't put its best foot forward, which is unfortunate because we have to watch the first one. But I got the first one and the last one. But what reminded him of it is they made a reference to this in that show Breaking Bad, which went right over my head. I didn't even notice that they had ever referenced this in Breaking Bad. But if you knew the show, you know, people were like, oh, Quark, right, I haven't thought of that since
1978.
Since April 1978 when it was canceled. So, you know, I think probably what's going to happen, I mean, we've been down these dark corridors before of weird old space shows from the 60s and the 70s that are not Star Trek. It's generally not a great time. And also shows like It's About Time that had a famous antecedent, is that the right word, when it comes before? And then they themselves are totally forgotten and were immediately canceled. You know, that's what this is. So as funny as this image is of the guy and his babes, I don't expect this show to be good.
However, if it's a parody of other shows, might be okay.
Yeah, you never know. Really, the most interesting fact I found about this is I dug back in to Get Smart a little bit, And I didn't realize that the other co-creator of Get Smart was Mel Brooks. Guy's had his finger in a lot of pies.
That doesn't surprise me now that you say it, though.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is the version that I found. This was the most recent upload of this show in the highest quality. But then when I just clicked on it earlier, they committed here. I'll show you. This is like a sin of video editing. Whoever did this is a bad person. See how it's cut off? So they made the show widescreen because nowadays TV is widescreen, but TV in 1977 was not meant to be widescreen. And sometimes you can do this if a show was shot on film. Sometimes I don't know, it depends. Like they did that with Buffy the Vampire Slayer because they had widescreen raw footage, but because it wasn't intended to be widescreen, you can see stuff in the corners sometimes that's not supposed to be there. You can see like lights and setup, where in this case, there is no extra information. All the guy did, whoever made this particular pirated copy of Quark, is he just chopped off the top and the bottom to make it look like widescreen. Like, that's not helping, guy. You've just destroyed the show. It doesn't, why does it need to be widescreen? So anyway.
Well, let's watch the show and see if he really did destroy it, because maybe he didn't. Maybe there wasn't enough substance there anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't really matter. But I mean, for example, maybe just because I'm a bit of a video nerd, but see how close this guy's face is?
Yeah.
Like, he's not supposed to, this is not supposed to be an extreme close-up. He's not supposed to take up the whole frame.
Yeah, right, because even his chin got knocked off here. And at the top of his head, too, come to think of it. Look, his hair's gone, too.
So, amateur move, whoever did that. That's not how it's supposed to be. But yeah, for our purposes, who cares? We're just watching a couple episodes. It doesn't really matter. But I just thought I'd point that out for the video nerds out there. They know what I'm talking about. It's like, you're not supposed to do that. You don't need to fake widescreen. It doesn't matter. Everything in the world doesn't need to be widescreen. But all right, Quark episode 1 and episode 8. I think these two, if you want to watch along, I believe they're in an unmolested format on YouTube. So I guess we could just watch those and I could quit my belly aching. But whatever, these are the ones I got. This is what we're going to watch.
Look at that thing. It looks like an egg curtain.
All right, so we only watched episode 1, but I know a losing hand when I see one. Even if that's not getting off to the greatest start or whatever, maybe it gets a little better. I mean, if that show got 100 times better, it still wouldn't be worth watching.
Yeah.
So first off, we jumped ship on that weird version I downloaded that was cut because we went and checked against the YouTube version. And yeah, 4:3, it's essentially square. At least a third of the screen was missing to make it widescreen. I mean, that's a separate topic that has nothing to do with this show, but whoever did that, bad on you. So we watched it on YouTube instead, because that's insane. You just couldn't see anything. I meant to mention at the start that there's this video game from when I was a kid called Space Quest, and the whole joke is that you're a janitor on this space station. You're the least interesting person, and the game starts with your ship got invaded by aliens, but the reason you're still alive is because you were slacking off at your job and you were asleep in the janitor closet. So seeing this, I'm like, I wonder if the Space Quest guys, because that came out in the 80s, if they were inspired by this guy being a space garbage man. And I couldn't find any information if there is anything. It could just be coincidence. But if this did inspire Space Quest, it's the one good thing this show did. Because, it was just... that laugh track was working overtime.
Yeah, and
Man.
it was slow moving, no real plot, except that I guess at the end we realized that because they survived, they are now going to scan the universe for garbage.
And there's so few characters. So there's 5 people on the ship, 2 of which are just the twins, which of all of them, I'm most okay with the twins because they looked them up too. They were in like Double Mint Wrigley's commercials and stuff. They do their job of being hot twins. But besides them, just a cranky old scientist guy. Back at HQ, there was some people, administrators, that talked to them. But it was certainly weird where one of the characters was called a transmute, and he has both male and female chromosomes, which basically just means he goes from being a tough guy to acting like a small girl, I guess. What was extra weird about that, especially us now being in a society that's a lot more aware of like transgender people and stuff, is that was the one time, maybe this was just coincidence, I might be looking into this too much, but that laugh track, it was dying laughing at every stupid thing that happened. But when they were describing that guy, and they described like, well, that's why he acts that way, because he's born with both the chromosomes. There's nothing wrong with it or whatever. And the creepy old scientist guy goes, yeah, but would you want your daughter or your son to marry one? And it was dead quiet. There was no laugh. And it's like, what the hell was that? You know? I don't know. The whole thing was very strange and somewhat uncomfortable. But that's like the only idea in this show is that maybe it's not okay to not be a clearly defined gender. Like, yikes. That's not putting its best foot forward. And yeah, basically, even if it gets better, I can't imagine, like, none of those characters are funny. I can't even envision how they ever could be funny. The special effects were awful. Like, I criticize Star Wars sometimes, but when I see Star Wars contemporaries, I know it was a movie and this is a TV show, but everything else is so much worse than Star Wars. It does make you appreciate that even if Star Wars has its problems, man, the special effects were better than everything else at the time. Because everything looked like crap. All of the little spaceships and stuff just look like unpainted toys. They did nothing to make them look like they were real spaceships. Yeah, because I was saying, even as we were watching Quark, like, if you've got this tiny cast on this ship, they got to do a lot of heavy lifting. Or like with Gilligan's Island, how in the Gilligan's Island pilot, they hadn't quite nailed it yet. But then when they finally did put out real Gilligan's Island, they kind of had it nailed. Because, like, you're on the island. No one else is coming. These characters have to be interesting. Or for any sitcom, really. But this is a similar situation. You're on this spaceship. You're off in the far reaches of wherever. No one else is going to be on your ship, probably. They, like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's like, how did you think this was going to work? That this was going to be the show?
Considering what was being produced in the 1970s in the sci-fi world, it didn't even try to come up to it. And you can't just pass yourself off as, well, I'm just a joke, I'm just a parody of things. You still got to put a little bit of effort into it.
Yeah, it kind of made me think of one of the reasons why I was never a big Star Wars fan is because as a kid, I saw Spaceballs like 50 times before I ever saw Star Wars. So when I finally saw Star Wars, it's like, oh, this is just Spaceballs with no jokes. But Spaceballs was exactly this. It was a sci-fi comedy that, in fact, had Mel Brooks in it. But it was awesome in and of itself. Like, it was still a really good adventure movie that had jokes. Where, yeah, this Quark show is just not a good show. And yeah, especially if this had been, I don't know, maybe the 50s. Maybe you could explain it more or, like, give it more of a pass. But Star Trek already happened 10 years before this. And now this is what they're putting on. And I know it's different because one's a comedy, but yeah, you can't just hide behind comedy, particularly if it's not funny. You know, that's pretty brutal. What I think we should do, instead of watching another episode, is, because this is by the Get Smart guy, I did grab an episode of Get Smart. What do you say, instead of watching...
Oh, sure. I watched a lot of Get Smart when I was growing up.
Yeah, so instead of watching another Quark, let's just watch the first episode of Get Smart.
See, and you'll see in Get Smart, there are really well-defined characters which really have an important role to play. Because not just Get Smart, but his girlfriend there.
Agent 99.
Agent 99 and the Chief. The Chief is very notable in Get Smart.
So let me just pull up some Get Smart info. Get Smart is an American comedy television series parodying the secret agent genre that had become widely popular in the first half of the 1960s with the release of the James Bond films. It started in 1965, ran for 5 seasons, 138 episodes, and yeah, like I said, it was this guy who made Quark, Buck Henry, but also Mel Brooks. And I was a little surprised to learn it wasn't actually necessarily their idea. It was that the network, was like, hey man, James Bond is big business right now. NBC said, can you make us a spy show? And Mel Brooks was like, yes, I enjoy money, and they made this. And yeah, like, again, I haven't seen this in forever, but again, that's the difference, I guess, is these shows, we found that kind of often in this podcast as we go through stuff. If a show had a short run and was forgotten, a la It's About Time, it's about space, it's about time. Let me just get that in everyone's head. There's probably a reason. Like, there's a reason why my generation never heard of it and it didn't last. Where a show like Gilligan's Island or Get Smart, I have seen because they did last into the 80s. And there was even a reboot, I didn't know about this, a reboot of Get Smart in 1995 that was still Don Adams and Barbara Feldon. They were both in it, both the original actors. And they don't look that much older, really. They aged pretty well. But it didn't last very long. But I mean, yeah, like this show, it's just going to be better. It just is better, you know? So...
Well, I'll say one little thing right now. This is on a personal note. When I was teaching high school before I went to law school this would be the mid 1970s. There was a certain, of course, my last name is Smart.
All right.
There was a certain, because some kids in that high school always called me Agent 99.
And your name's Barbara as well, like Barbara Feldon. So you really are.
Yeah, I really nailed it, eh?
Yeah. This is actually making me think of, I mean, maybe we'll watch it next week. What was the Diana Rigg show? The Avengers?
The Avengers.
Yeah, which
Oh,
was...
yeah. British.
And more serious, right?
Oh, yes. It would be worthwhile watching an Avenger or two.
Yeah, maybe we'll curve our way through. I mean, maybe this was a bad idea anyway, because the whole reason Random Lad brought up the Quark was because we went through that phase of watching 70s space shows. But they were all bad. None of them were good. So I probably shouldn't have steered us back into this lane. But yeah, let's steer out. Let's steer out into Get Smart. And next week we'll watch the Avengers. We'll get into the spy world instead of the space world.
Speaking of espionage shows, though, if we do the Avengers, there's also The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, I've never seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E., so it's just one of those...
Well done. It's another one that should be checked out.
Yeah, because again, I've heard the name and I don't know anything about it. So yeah, we'll add that to the docket too. So this will... Sorry you got destroyed on our sacrificial altar, Quark, but first off, you brought it upon yourself, and second, you got us into a nice spy vein. So you did your job. All right, Get Smart, Season 1, Episode 1. From, oh, look at that, September 18th, 1965. It was my birthday, minus several years.
14 years.
Somewhere in this city is the headquarters of a top-secret organization known as Control. Its business is counterespionage.
Wrong number.
Wrong number.
So yeah, that is extremely better. That is miles better. Yeah, like I noticed, we were already starting to laugh, so just I checked the time code. Not even 2 minutes in, we were already cracking up at this show, whereas it just never happened with the other one.
Classic show.
That's kind of cool too, because I think this is a similar situation to Gilligan's Island, where all the ones that they reran, or Beverly Hillbillies, same thing. By the time I was watching these shows in reruns, they had just kind of taken the black and white ones out of the rotation because nobody in the 80s wanted to watch black and white shows, which sounds shallow, but they were probably right. As a kid, I probably wouldn't have watched a black and white show. But it's cool because I've never seen one of the black and white episodes, and I actually even like this show better in black and white. It just feels like it fits better with the spy motif, and it gives it this classic kind of cool feeling.
It's the same with Gilligan's Island. The early Gilligans are in black and white, and it's the same feel of... These shows are so successful when you look back at them because of the time that they were done. And black and white TV was still a big thing in people's houses in the middle 1960s. I mentioned, earlier I had mentioned the Man from U.N.C.L.E., same thing. I don't know if they finished up in color, but the originals, I believe, were in black and white.
Yeah, and I think the black and white, it just kind of looks, I don't know, I guess it's because when they first switched to color, I mean, I guess they just didn't, it was new technology, they had to work with it, but color balancing and lighting and scene composition, yada yada, there's a million things about it that got tougher, where black and white just looks good. It is so hard to not film something well in black and white. Black and white just looks awesome.
Well, and everything in, background is much more intense because you're only seeing it in, black and white and possibly shades of gray. Whereas in color has a tendency to detract. It's not as sharp as
and
black
even
and white.
The little tiny clip we watched a little bit of the color version from season 3 just to contrast, and it makes it look more like sets. Like if you just have kind of those weird colors too in the late 60s, early 70s, like blue paisley walls or whatever, that just weird colors. They just look like sets, where in black and white, it really makes everything look more like a real place.
In that first episode too, I don't remember if the others are as well defined as that one, but that had a whole lot of action in it. Outdoor scenes, the Statue of Liberty, out in the bay, street scenes. They really went overboard in scene changes in that. That must have cost quite a bit of money to produce that very first show.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, is that idea of the first scene of the first episode, where you've really got to, like, this is your best chance to hook an audience. It's only going to go down from there. And Quark's first scene was space show, intense, gotta get a thing. Oh, I'm just getting a bag of garbage from outer space. Like, that was their opening gambit. Where this one was the phone being in the shoe. So much better.
Ringing and ringing.
Yeah.
Ringing in the opera or whatever show he was at. And of course, everybody is looking because he's interrupting the show and he's going to sneak out.
Well, that's where I really feel like you can feel the Mel Brooks. Because both shows were very dumb. But the Mel Brooks style of dumbness is like smart dumbness. Like, why would you have a super hidden shoe phone that no one will ever know that you have a secret phone on you if it loudly rings? Why doesn't it just vibrate on his foot or something? It makes no sense. It's just ridiculous, but in a funny way. Or the cone of silence. He's talking to his superior and, like, they don't want anyone to overhear their spy plans. Shouldn't we bring down the cone of silence? And they just bring down this big
plexiglass thing, and they can't hear each other in the cone of silence.
Yeah, because there's no talking in between the cones. It's two separate bubbles. Like, it just makes no sense. It's just dumb. And for the next 2 minutes, they can't understand what each other is saying. And they're like, let's just get rid of the cone of silence. Like, that's such a Mel Brooks joke of, like, it's so dumb that it loops back around to being clever.
Even the opening credits catch you because he arrives at control. He has to go down these stairs. He goes through a hallway. He goes through any number of doors. He ends up in a phone booth, and then the phone booth descends into a lower level. Even that catches your interest, like right off the top. You're like, look at all the crap this guy's got to go through just to get to the office.
Yeah, that's definitely
but
a part of it.
But it catches you. It grabs you right from the beginning.
Yeah, like, beyond the jokes, it's also, like you said, it has actual action scenes and stuff. But yeah, it's just got, like, the neat gadgets and the, like, Q making him stuff. And just the whole world of his weird spy organization is just fun on that level. It's just interesting, like, what neat little thing is going to happen.
And each of the characters are so well defined. I mean, as soon as you meet the chief, he is the chief. He could not be confused with anybody else. 99, of course, is beautiful girl who...
Which, there's another thing. It takes him 15 minutes to realize, wait a minute, until she takes off her hat and has long hair. You're a woman.
And of course, then he's going to do the kiss scene.
Yeah, right.
Because that's what all spies do when they meet up with beautiful girls.
Yeah, like, what was that? No, James Bond, his license, I guess, is just to kill, but... Yeah, I guess he has no specific license for sleeping with women. He just does. Yeah, that's definitely a spy trope. I was thinking, too, that... I mean, I don't think I've heard Don Adams speak in 25 years. I haven't watched this since I was a kid. But, man, as soon as he starts talking, it's like, oh, yeah, nobody sounds like that guy. Like, his delivery is
very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
And, of course, they have to do the big joke. Mr. Big, of course, is the tiny little, that cute little, the cute little dwarf.
Even that, though, like, yeah, like, even jokes like that they probably wouldn't make nowadays, where the one in Quark was so uncomfortable and strange about the transmute, where this is somewhat similar, where, it's sort of out of favor now to just for the joke to be that a guy is a short guy. But they even did that better because he offers them a drink and they're like, no. But then he's like, well, how about I have this fancy tobacco from Germany? Gives them a tiny cigarette, which... Yeah, that's, again, just Mel Brooks' dumbness. But what I thought made that joke go, again, beyond being dumb into clever is since it's this little tiny cigarette, Agent Smart only gets to take...
One puff.
If even, like half a puff.
One puff.
And the cigarette's done. He's like, that was great. Yeah. Like that little extra bit of... That's, I guess, what I get the feeling of with this show, is it seems like a lot of thought was put into it, all the dumb jokes. It wasn't, it wasn't just dumb... because it was dumb. It was like purposefully dumb.
Yeah, very, very clever. Oh, and even the fact that the little boy, he knew the code word, the Mets, I'm forgetting what it was, Mets
it
won
was
or
Mets,
something.
Mets winning a doubleheader,
And it's in the newspaper, and the little boy mentions it, and Smart immediately presumes that he's 99.
But if anything, that was the one part I was a little surprised about, is that he mistakes the kid for being Agent 99, but it only lasts for 30 seconds. I expected that to go on. I thought like real Agent 99 would show up while he was still trying to pretend the kid was the agent. I was a little surprised how quickly that one stopped, but
But they also had totally unexpected things in there, like Agent 37 or whoever he was, who was hiding out in the lockers. And he's going to foil chaos, and he slams the guy in the face. And you think, okay, well, that's the end of him. But no, that's not the end. No, he's got to open up the bottom of the lockers and drag him in.
right, yeah, like it's a fun world where one thing I noticed I didn't bring up when we were watching Quark, but because again, it's just a hallmark of all those 70s sci-fi shows is annoying sounds. You know, it's like, all right, we're going to be on a fake-looking spaceship with a big boxy robot, and he's going to be making obnoxious beeps, and every time an alien shows up it goes and like it's just an annoying place to be where the Get Smart scenario is a cool place to be where fun weird stuff happens, and like even if it wasn't haha funny, something visually interesting was going to happen, or some quirky idea.
Typical, as you said before, typical Mel Brooks, where he throws things out there in the comedic line that are totally unexpected, but they're unexpected, but you say, yeah, that fits in here. But it is totally unexpected because you'd never think of it yourself.
That's like, there's the scene in Spaceballs where Rick Moranis plays Darth Vader, but he's Darth Helmet. He just has a huge helmet, and they can't figure out where the rebels are. So again, this is just Mel Brooks weirdness that only Mel Brooks would do. So they're like, how are we going to figure out where they are? So they go into their giant spaceship has a video store, and they get the Spaceballs movie from the video store, and they just fast forward further into the movie than we are to see what's going to happen. And it's like, only Mel Brooks would do that. That's so weird. And you feel that all over Get Smart, where I think he, you can really feel that he wasn't there for the other show. You know what that also made me think of? Maybe before we do Avengers and Man from U.N.C.L.E., maybe to ease us in through spy comedy for one more before we get into the more serious shows, the one thing Get Smart I felt was kind of lacking. It made me think of the Naked Gun movies, and before that they were based on a show called Police Squad, where extremely similar, except what Police Squad did is non-stop verbal jokes. Every single sentence is like a joke on top of what other jokes are happening. And I feel like that's the kind of thing I bet Mel Brooks saw that, you know, down the road and was like, oh, that's an extra layer I didn't think of, because that's the only thing that Get Smart was missing. Where it's like ludicrous in those shows. It just won't stop.
I know.
And they're not good. Like, they're deliberately corny, but it's just like, surely you can see that this plane isn't going to work. I can't see that at all, and don't call me Shirley. Like, it's all crap like that, but it's so relentless that it becomes funny. So I thought maybe we could watch a Police Squad episode.
Okay.
And then we'll get into the less jokey ones. But I would like to solemnly at this funeral for the TV show Quark,
Yeah.
I would like to
Quark to rest.
yeah, hey, sure, maybe you left a horribly mangled corpse, but you led us back to the beauty of Get Smart. So thank you for that. We appreciate your service.